Welcome to today's webinar, Increasing Pathways to Career Development Through Inclusive and Accessible Processes. Those are a lot of words. Glad you're here today, and I'm so glad that our guests are here because I always learn when they're here, so it's really cool to have them. I'm Yvonne Sims. I'm the Educational Programming Manager for Candid, based in Atlanta. So there's a few of us, but I'm one of the ones that's in Atlanta. And if you don't know Candid already, it's been a few years now. It's been 6 years, so hopefully you kind of do know us. But we're the Coming Together of Foundation Center and Guide Star. And if you visited our website more recently, you'll see that it's all really coming together this particular year. So since 2019, these two organizations have come together with their over 90 years of experience in the nonprofit sector to give data and give information and to give training and all of the tools that nonprofits need to do good work. I'm going to let our guests, Kevin McCloskey and Rebecca Langbian, introduce themselves today in the way that they prefer rather than reading their bios. So I'm going to stop sharing. And here are our folks from Disability Belongs today.
Hello, hello. All right, going to share my slides now, so hopefully everyone can see those.
Yes, we see them.
Welcome. Yeah, so thank you so much. Thank you, Candid, the Candid family, for having us back again. Very happy to be here, especially as we lead up to National Disability and Employment Awareness Month, other known as NDEAM. This year's theme is celebrating value and talent, and we're going to talk a little bit about value and talent today. So glad to be here. Again, our very, very long title, Increasing Pathways to Career Development through Inclusive and Accessible Processes. But we want to make sure you know what the presentation's about. So there you go. And this is presented by Disability Belongs, which I'll talk about in a second. A little bit about me and Rebecca. So I am Kevin McCluskey, pronouns he, him. Quick visual description is I'm a white male in his mid 40s. The black hair has gone a little salt and pepper these days. Even the stubble is a little bit gray as I look at myself in the Zoom right now. My title is Senior Director of Leadership and Workforce Development here at Disability Belongs, which that means I work with employers, nonprofits, and different organizations on advancing opportunities for employment for people with disabilities. So again, working with employers, job seekers, nonprofits, organizations, really to help create pathways for people with disabilities finding meaningful employment. I also oversee our leadership program, which Rebecca will talk about in a second and throughout this presentation. A little bit about me. I am from Connecticut, a wonderful little town called Bethel. I'm sure most of you are not familiar with it. But it's a lovely town, three children, wonderful wife, and my dog Noopies, who is at my feet right now, my best friend. And since our intros are a little too long, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to pass it over to Rebecca.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So happy to be with you today. My name is Rebecca Langbine. My pronouns are she, her. Quick visual description. I'm a 30-year-old white woman, but my skin usually looks red in Zoom, with wearing glasses, and I have like dirty blonde hair, with a Disability Belongs background on my Zoom screen. Like Kevin said, I manage our leadership program at Disability Belongs, which probably doesn't mean a ton to you yet. By the end of the program, it will, because you'll know more about that and what we do. But just a little more about me. I was an engineer and an occupational therapist, really passionate about universal design and how we could design a world that was more accessible and inclusive for people, whether they have disabilities or not. And that ultimately led me to do the work that I do now. And personally, I live right outside of Philly in New Jersey with my fiance and our cat, who is our favorite living being in the whole world. So yeah, happy to be here today and talk a little bit more about what we do and share it with you guys.
Right. Thanks, Rebecca. All right, so we are Disability Belongs, and if you haven't heard from us, you might have heard our old name, Respectability. So we went through a rebrand about a little over a year ago, and I'll talk about that in a second. But Disability Belongs is a diverse, disability-led nonprofit that works to create systematic change and how society views and values people with disabilities. So a couple important things about that is we're disability-led. So I think most of our leadership has a disability or identifies as a person with a disability. And we also have about 82 to 86% of our total staff identifies as a person with a disability. We are diverse. We work all across the country, doing wonderful things. We are fully remote. We're based out of Fredericksburg, Virginia, but we all are remote and do work all across the U.S. Our mission is to drive culture and policy change to ensure our full representation and influence, creating a more accessible, equitable, and inclusive society. And I did kind of read that because it is pretty new. We kind of revamped our mission statement as we rebranded our organization. So there it is. We are now Disability Belongs. And if you look at our logo on the right, you'll see that blue actually is a D, and the B actually, sorry, the green is actually a B. So that's our logo. It's also really talks about the intersection between disability and other backgrounds as well, and how disability overlaps. So that's a little bit about our logo. And as far as our branding, again, we were respectability, and we decided through working internally with our employees, our leaders, our external partners, and some members of the community. We decided to put disability back into our name, right? We chose that because um, we want to help remove some of the stigmas that are associated with the term disability. And while we love celebrating abilities, we know it's crucial. It's also important to recognize and really respect the overlap and intersections of human experiences of disability, and disability is certainly a part of that. So that's a little bit about the rebrand. Went through a whole process. I was a part of the committee, again, looking at internal employees, external partners, individuals we work with, members of the disability community, and really went through that whole process and came up with a name that I really, really like and really enjoy working for, which is Disability Belongs. Real quick about what we do. I like to include this because we do a lot of different things. And we call this right now our focus areas. So we have our entertainment media policy, faith and spirituality, and leadership and workforce development, which is Rebecca and my team. So a little bit the entertainment and media. We work with a lot of different studios and studio partners to really kind of do two things. We want to increase representation of people with disabilities on the TV screen and the film screen. We do that. We also do a lot of work as far as consulting, making sure that disability is not only on the screen, but also authentically represented. So we work with different studio partners to make sure the characters and the dialogue fits the disability community. I always say at the heart of our organization, we're an advocacy organization. So our policy and civic engagement teams, mostly work on a national level, supporting, supporting working with lawmakers to increase disability inclusion in different worlds, whether it's the workforce, whether it's in the voting booth. So our team works a lot on a national level, but as well as on a state level too. And then our faith and spiritual team, same thing on what the other focus areas do is really ensuring the inclusion of people with disabilities in those communities, whether it's, more accessible services or employment opportunities within these communities. And then on the leadership and workforce side, we'll talk a little bit about this today, but we have our leadership program that keeps on hinting to, and I promise we'll get to it and talk about it a little bit. And again, on the workforce development side, working with employers, again, to create more accessible places and more disability inclusive workplaces. And that's a little bit about my background, working directly with employers to put together really successful and sustainable programs to go out there and actively recruit, actively hire, actively promote people with disabilities. So we have our first and only poll question today. We want to hear from you because this presentation we're going to do today, we believe is for all audiences, but we want to kind of get a feel for who's out there so we can kind of direct some questions. So let me know who is out there. Are you a CEO, maybe executive director, upper management? Are you on the fundraising development side? Are you a grant writer? Are you an individual grant seeker? Do you work in marketing communications? Are you a nonprofit startup? Maybe you're a program director and staff, a grant maker, funder, or other. So we'll keep that up there for about
Yeah, and
15.
make sure you scroll, folks, just in
Yeah,
case you may not
it's a
realize
long.
there's some other options. Although a lot of people are saying other, so they have scrolled to the bottom.
All right, I like that.
All right, all
The
right.
other's just gonna make me have more questions, I guess, huh?
Right. What do you mean, other?
Yeah.
Um,
So we
and
have got
other
about,
is in the lead, just so you know.
yeah,
Like,
it
what
is.
did I not cover?
That's good though. I like that. So we have about 20%
Mhm.
CEO, executive director, 11% fundraising, about 50% grant writer, board member about 4%, program director 20-ish percent, and others
Yes.
30%.
Yeah,
So
Cynthia says she fills or they fill multiple roles. So I'm just gonna end it in share so people can kind of see
yeah,
what we just said. So yep, board members still 4%, COED 19%, fundraising development staff 11%, grant writer 15. Oh, individual grant seekers and marketing are not here right now. Nonprofit startup 3%, program director and staff 18%, and then we had other 29%. So I'll stop sharing that.
right.
Thank
So
you,
about
everyone.
30 are other. So feel free to put in the chat where you're from, and we'll take a look at that. And again, our presentation we believe is good for everyone, but we want to, if there's a 30% other, really want to focus on a topic that we can talk about that as well. All right, so let's go into it. Again, I talked a little bit about this already, but workforce development strategies. Again, we work with employers really anywhere, and there's a lot of different things you can do to be accessible and more disability inclusive or more disability effective in the workplace. You can make your websites more accessible. You could, look at your applicant tracking systems, improve your accommodation process. And we're going to talk a lot about these already. But we are here to really support employers, meeting them where they are, really starting with some education, opening up some minds, and then going on and coming up with a plan to really how your employer wants to go and attract and hire people with disabilities. So I'll throw it over to Rebecca to talk a little bit about our leadership program.
Thank you. So like Kevin said, the focus area that we work in at Disability Belongs is called Leadership and Workforce Development. So Kevin kind of touched on the workforce development piece, and we'll get a little bit more into that here a little bit later. But also our leadership program, which a lot of folks on the Disability Belongs team say is one of their favorite things that we do at the whole organization. So it's a program that trains emerging leaders who are committed to disability issues and preparing for careers in policy, advocacy, marketing and communications, entertainment, fundraising, nonprofit management, or faith and spiritual inclusion. So we train mostly young adults, but not all young adults, and people with disabilities and allies. So not everybody in the program has a disability who are really interested in infusing disability inclusion into whatever field that they are looking to go into. So next slide, please. So just a little bit more about the program, so you have some context for what we're talking about when we refer to it. So the program runs twice a year for 5 months at a time. So we have a cohort in the spring and a cohort in the fall. And about 8 to 12 individuals come to Disability Belongs, and they work with us for about 15 to 20 hours per week, and they're paid for their time, of course. And they work across different focus areas, like Kevin mentioned before, the faith and spirituality piece, entertainment and media, leadership and workforce, policy. And then they also work in some of our internal departments in marketing and in operations. And so they're really enmeshed in those different departments and those different focus areas, getting some real hands-on experience as to what it would be like to work in that field. And at the same time, we're doing lots of professional development stuff, working on personalized job searching and identifying what types of jobs would be exciting or interesting, and in what fields they would like to work. And we also bring in guest speakers so that they can connect with other people who are infusing disability inclusion into their work in some way. We also do a lot of advocacy training, both how to advocate for yourself as an individual in the workplace and how to have some conversations that can be difficult, especially if you're a person with a disability, talking about things like accommodations in the workplace. And then we also do like broader level advocacy training for the disability community at large. And everybody who graduates from our program gets some experience in all of the different areas in which Disability Belongs works, which is a really cool part of the program because everyone leaves with like a baseline understanding of how to write a grant proposal and how to analyze a piece of policy to understand how to advocate for it, and things of this nature. So it's a really wonderful program. Maybe I'm biased because I run it, but the most wonderful thing about the program is the awesome individuals who come through it, and we get the pleasure of working with them for 5 months at a time. All right, next.
All right, so I think the first step of kind of developing a program and looking at anything, any project, right? Like where's the money coming from? How are we going to do this, right? First, maybe like, who's going to do it and how are we going to do it as far as money? So that's the first thing. If you want to start a leadership program, a hiring program, how is your program funded? So here at Disability Belongs, our leadership program is funded by foundations, so donors. So there's individuals, there's organizations that come and, we go through the process of the funding process, the application process, and they fund specific parts of the program. We also have a lot of great partners in the community, like Rebecca talked about. We have guest speakers. We've had guest speakers from Royal Caribbean talk about accessibility on their cruise ships and as well as employment. We've had a teacher friend of mine who does universal learning come in and talk about different topics. And we also have organizations that come and provide some services to help review resumes or help with interviews or help how to make your LinkedIn profile better. So kind of tapping into those community partners or employer partners that are out there that want to support leadership programs such as ours or such as something you're trying to develop or maybe have developed. So those partners are really important. Finding funding partners. Obviously, we're with Candid right now. They really have a lot of great resources and trainings that are there right for you. I've watched a few over the last year for sure as we kind of went into our funding application process. But finding so again, Candid can talk very much about their tool and finding those funding partners. But really look for what your program's all about, right? We are focusing on disability, obviously, so we're looking for funding partners that typically fund disability programs, specifically around workforce. Again, we have like a faith and spirituality department and part of our leadership program. So we work with faith or funding partners that fund those type of communities as well. So really tapping into any of those foundations that support really what you're looking to do. And they're hard to find at stuff, but there's great, like I said, great tools out there to do so. And we also look at like disability is one of those areas that sometimes, there might be a lot of inclusive work going on in these foundations, but disability sometimes is often left out. So it's not always easy to find funding partners that specifically work with disability. So we kind of look outside that and look for like what workforce or leadership programs are funded by this organization as well. And it's really important for stability, as we mentioned. Fact that we do pay our fellows to come through our leadership program, and that's very important to us. They're not just interns doing, getting some really professional development. It's really doing work for our organization. It's writing policy memos. It's doing research. It's putting together presentations. It's supporting, putting this presentation together for Candid. So our fellows do actually work. We want to make sure they get paid for that. And we also when we come to paying our fellows, we match I'm going to forget the name of it right now off the top of my head. We just talked about Rebecca, but the national, help me out here. Talked about Seattle
The
earlier.
minimum
The
wage.
minimum wage, I
Hmm.
exactly can't think of the word.
Hmm.
So we look at the minimum wage all across the country and where our fellows are located for that specific cohort and make sure we're matching that or going above that. So we want to make sure, again, we are not only putting together a solid leadership program, but also supporting disability employment altogether, where we're paying and putting some really good individuals to work. So that's really important for stability as we look at our funding partners. It's not just how do we get this off the ground and fund for 1 year. We're looking for partners to get involved with us for 2 to 3 years. Looking at the future constantly, like if we have funding now, how do we grow the program? And I think Rebecca just talked about it, the success of the program. We've had a really good employment rate for our alumni of the program. So we aren't just want to be happy with the 8 to 10 that we're bringing in every cohort. We want to build on that. And we have ideas how to do different paths. So we're always looking for the future, and finding a great funding partner helps to kind of lead that way. Um, and I can go on forever about funding, but like make sure when you're working with funders and you're going through those application processes, make sure you're really matching what they're looking for. It's kind of like going for a job. When you're going for a job, you want to make sure you're matching those keywords to the job description. So that's really important. And also with funding does come funding requirements on our end. So again, if we're working with a funder who specifically works in the faith and spirituality department, they might have funding requirements, that one of the fellows must be of this faith or something like that. So as you're working with funders, and you can kind of, again, relate your program to what they're looking for. But if they have some of those requirements, got to make sure you're hitting those requirements. Making the funders happy is a large part of my job, to make sure they want to continue supporting the program and they're getting something out of it as well. Obviously, putting money towards a great cause and a great program is great, but there's got to be a little bit of back and forth. I know some funders really like the marketing aspect of it, and marketing the success of the program. Some don't want any mention of their name. They kind of just want it to be a silent donation or funding situation. So, really important piece of the puzzle. You can't, we have this number one because if there's no number one, you really can't go to number two. So, funding, crucial part of developing any leadership program or project. All right. The recruitment. So I know I saw in the chat why I was in HR on that list. I'm glad a lot of HR people are here. That's kind of my bread and butter audience. I was going off a list of like who we thought would be here. So it's great to know that hopefully that 30% of other is in that HR field, because I'm glad you're here and I'd love to talk with you. So as we go out and look for participants in our program, we start the recruitment process. And those HR individuals know first we gotta, we look at our funding, our dollars. How many people are we going to be recruiting for the spring cohort or the fall cohort based on our funding? Anywhere we typically go from 8 to 12, depending. Um, and then again, like I said, we want to grow it into the future and create different paths as well. So we're not happy with that 8 to 12. We want to keep on going. Um, and a little bit, I'll go back a little bit on my background. Um, Prior to joining Disability Belongs, I worked for another organization, again, helping employers build successful and sustainable programs around disability. And what I did there and what I do here is, again, work ex with the employer, right? Set the employer up for success as much as possible. Again, there's a million different things you can do to be disability effective, but you got to start somewhere. And typically that's with the education, that's looking at your systems and everything like that. So, what we did was really go into discovery work with the employer, kind of learning everything about the employer, not just like what they do for disability, because typically it's not a lot, but going with an employer and learning everything about them. So when we go out and create that bridge to the disability community, whether that being job seekers or community-based organizations, we're very knowledgeable on the employers we're working with and kind of building that bridge so the talent partners can provide some really good talent for the employers and so on and so forth. So it's a little bit about my background, and this is where this comes from as I talk about recruitment. So again, understand your needs. What are your needs? So again, Rebecca are starting this process for our spring cohort. We're going to announce the leadership program application process starting in October. So right now we're starting, right? What's our funding look like? What are our needs? How many individuals are we going to need to hire? Are we still doing it the same thing we did last year? So we're gonna have, two for faith, one for entertainment, and so on and so forth. What do our needs look like? And then we're gonna highlight what we're looking for, along with your organization's mission and the commitments. Like you kind of like selling your program to the external world, and trying to recruit the best of the best for your specific program. Uh, and again, this is funny because we just came off a call, Rebecca, to review and update language, right? If you're in the HR world or you're currently a job seeker, reading some of those job descriptions could be very frustrating. If you're going for a remote role and it's like, must be able to carry or lift 30 to 60 pounds daily. Like, is that an Amazon package that's coming? So, constantly review and update the language of your page, right? Because things change. Today's job might not look like 6 months ago's job, and we're reviewing it currently, and we've made significant changes to our process than we did whatever it was 4 months ago. So constantly look at that language, make sure it does reflect what you're currently recruiting for. That's huge, and I'll relate that to your accommodation process and your job application process and your job descriptions. It's really important to look at that and see if it's really what you're looking for. Create a diverse talent partner network. I'm not sure how much we're going to get into this later, but what that means is, typically when I'm working with an employer, I go to, if we're in Memphis, Tennessee, I go to Memphis, Tennessee, and I look at what kind of talent partners are out there. And talent partners are basically organizations working with job seekers. So in my case, I'm looking for organizations that work with job seekers with disabilities. So I reach out to a vocational rehab office that's in Memphis, Tennessee. I reach out to veteran groups. I reach out to any organization that is providing services to job seekers with disabilities and create a partner network. To me, going to one partner or two partner really isn't going to get the job done. If broaden your nets, you're going to get again, the best of the best for what you're looking for your program. And that's really important. As I mentioned, there's a million things you can do to be more disability inclusive or effective as an employer. Creating a partner network and reaching out to the disability community to me is number one of where I've seen success. So again, create a nice talent partner network. And then as you have that talent partner, you go out and you educate and you outreach, right? Much like reviewing and updating the language, you want to educate on what you're looking for. And there'll be questions still, but you want to kind of give as much education and information as possible for everyone to understand exactly what the program's about, exactly when the deadlines are, how to apply, what's going to be needed for applying, so on and so forth. So as much information as possible, you can set up just like foundations do for funding, they set up, kind of an overview of what it is. So you can set up webinars and do a meeting about, what the program's all about. Rebecca has a lot of individuals reach out to her about the program, and we set up meetings to just kind of talk them through exactly what it's all about, and then do that outreach. So, blast emails out, put it on your socials, have that talent partner network that you have, and reach out to them. For us, again, if we're recruiting, with funding requirements that we reach out to specific organizations to find those individuals that meet our grant requirements. So education, outreach go hand in hand to me. Is like when you're outreaching, you're also educating. Um, there's a lot more I can talk about, but I'm going to pause there for a second. And then ensure accessibility. Again, kind of going up to that review and update language bullet. You want to make sure everything's accessible. Reach out to someone who has a specific disability, reach out to a disability-led organization to make sure if you have any questions around accessibility. Because that word is kind of like the accommodations word. Sometimes it's like, oh, it will be accessible to everyone. That means just like it's supposed to be accessible to everyone, but it's not. So you want to make sure that, using alt text, all that good stuff, and we can dive a little bit into later, but ensure accessibility, especially if you're doing a disability recruiting program. This me as well, Rebecca? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. All right. So I was going to talk about this. So this is your talent network that I talked about. So a talent partner is an organization that supports job seekers with disabilities. There's services like career counseling, training, or placement. So this is your talent partners. This is your talent network. And they kind of fall into five buckets. We have a six bucket here. So government agencies, such as your vocational rehab. If you're in the HR and you're that 30% of HR people out there and you don't know what VR or vocational rehab is, Google it right now and find out where your locations are. That should be one of the ones you're reaching out to start your outreach. There's America Job Centers or Workforce Centers. There's national nonprofits that are very familiar to most that do this work. Also, sometimes we forget veterans often have disabilities. So I've had a lot of success working with the VA and some other organizations out there that you might know of. And then there's disability specific organizations. Again, if we have a grant that requires us to recruit a certain amount of people with a certain disability, we have to make those partnerships and make sure we're bringing those individuals in. And then there's educational institutions such as universities, community colleges, high schools, so on and so forth. So those right there, that's five buckets. So think about when you're creating a talent partner network, you want to reach out to all these organizations and keep a steady flow of communication and education so they're able and have the most knowledge to talk to their job seekers and send their job seekers over. All right. Um, and again, I can talk about this forever, but I will stop there to see if there's any questions. Yvonne, is there any questions that I should address now? Thinking now.
There was a question a little bit ago about like what types of disabilities do people in the program have? And like, do we serve through the work that we do? Which
Sure.
we could answer now, or we could answer at any point because it's relevant pretty much on all of in all of this content. I think it's a good question. If you want to answer it, you can, Kevin, or I'm happy to.
Yeah, do you want to go for it?
Sure. Yeah. So, in all of the work that we do at Disability Belongs, we're serving the disability community at large. So that includes our leadership program, and that includes like when we talk about, 80 some percentage of our staff identify as a person with a disability. That includes all different types of disabilities, disabilities that are apparent that we can see, things like people who have mobility disabilities, maybe use a wheelchair, or people who wear hearing aids, things that you can visually see with your eyes. But it also includes people who have non-apparent disabilities, disabilities that we can't necessarily see, but might affect the way that someone goes about their day-to-day life. So, for example, I'm a person who has non-apparent disability. You wouldn't know just by looking at me in my little Zoom box, but I do identify as a person with a disability. So we have lots of folks come through the program with all different types of disabilities, physical, mental health, mobility. Lots of folks come through identify as neurodivergent or on the autism spectrum. So really everybody. We are inclusive of all people in the disability community when we talk about who we serve at Disability Belongs and through the program.
You're kind of answering the same question I think I see. Yes, what is the spectrum of persons with disabilities? So I think that's the same question, and everything else kind of looks like it's for us. Oh, wait, here's one. Do you have sample language for job descriptions and job postings?
Not necessary sample language. But there's like just review the job to make sure, especially like if you're in HR, review it with the hiring manager, the individual managing that individual that will be doing that job, just to make sure it is where it's supposed to be. And I know working with different application tracking systems, or ATSs, there's kind of like when you're creating a job description, there's like drop downs, and sometimes people just like select things because they think, oh yeah, that'd be good. That'd be good to have. Like, what is really the need for the job? And a lot of companies are doing a much better job of like kind of just paragraphing what's needed rather than listing all these requirements. Because when people go through and they see all those lists of requirements and they don't fit one or two, they might not apply. Specifically, women, stats show that women kind of do that, don't apply for jobs that they don't think they're all the way qualified for. So really looking at the current state of that job and does it match the job description? So kind of like, go through that and like what is really the day-to-day job. One employer I work with had a job description and it really didn't match the job at all. And what they did was when they invited individuals into interview, they'd interview them, but then they go and actually show them the job. And when they saw the job, that was much better to understand what the responsibilities are versus writing it on paper, because then you see what the job actually looks like. So those are called, I think, walking interviews. There might be another name for it, but walking interviews and show the individuals the job. There's also like job previews you can do that are videos that really show the job. But there's not really a simple template or anything like that, but it's really just looking at the job to see if like those responsibilities really match what you're looking for. Like, do they really need a college degree, or is college degree or 5 years experience doing this something? So really take the time to really look at those jobs, especially if you're hiring a lot for those jobs and there's a lot of turnover. So that could be helpful.
Thank you. And then I see someone said, are there people with disabilities that you don't serve? People who have trouble putting stickers on items, for instance. That's a real example from Michelle's work.
No, yeah, we do not say we don't hire anyone for sure. I'm sure that was the real question, but yeah, we are inclusive to every disability. We're really looking, as anyone should do, hiring, looking for the right person for that's a right fit for this program. And that can mean a lot of different things at a lot of different times and really kind of specific for each focus area that we do as well. So we're not specifically looking for any type of disability or don't not include anyone with a different disability. And again, it's open to everyone. We haven't kept a lot of great stats all the way through our program, but for the last 3 or 4 years, we show a lot of diversity within those disabilities out there as well.
So, Kevin, and I'm kind of asking this, does that mean that I must disclose my disability if I'm applying to your leadership program? No. Rebecca's gonna hurt herself. No, it's shaking her
Shaking
head.
it now, shaking it now. No, yeah, like any other application, sort of now. You have the opportunity to disclose a disability, but you definitely don't have to tell us, it's identifying as a person with a disability or not. Definitely don't have to mention what disability you have. If you need an accommodation, that might be a different scenario of how we kind of accommodate your specific needs. And it's also, I think Rebecca mentioned this before, it typically is like 90 to 95% of our program participants do have a disability. But it's not specifically or exclusively for people with disabilities, but it tends to be. If that makes sense.
Gotcha, gotcha. So I'm between the chat and the Q&A because we're supposed to put our questions in the Q&A, folks. So let me go to that one first. Do you train people on skills they are lacking to fill the role, or do they need to come with a specific skill set?
That is a great and very tricky question. As I mentioned, um, we are providing a lot of professional development skills as well as other, other skills as well. So when we're looking for the right person for the right role, it could vary. Because we do love people coming with experience so they can, again, we have a lot of projects that we need individuals to work on, but we tend to be looking for people that could really use the program. So people who might not be the best interview, but you see there's like with just a little bit of polishing, this person could be really great at interviewing, or this, individual could be this or that. So we are hiring people for the program that sometimes aren't the perfect fit for the job. So, but we see the ability for them to grow into a really great leader. So it is a little tricky when we're doing that because it's a little bit of, again, a lot of a good experience, a little bit of like needing that professional development and some other factors as well. So there's no really right, wrong answer to that, but we are looking for someone who could use a little bit of development.
Ah, okay. And then we have another question. How can we coach candidates and employees to speak about their needed accommodations in a way that makes them feel comfortable and safe? And that's fine, Emma.
Yeah, again, I was looking at a million different presentations today, so I believe we're going to talk about this today. If not, I
Ah,
will address it when we get to that point. I think we are. At least we'll have like a good lead into it. So we can talk about this. Great, great, great question. A lot of what we do here. So we'll definitely talk about that.
okay. Do you think it's time to move on? We have a couple more, but maybe you're about to address those that you want to mention.
Um, yeah, let's go one more. This is fun.
Okay. What resources are available for people on the autism spectrum not yet formally diagnosed, but knows she or he has the patterns?
What resources available was the question?
Yeah, what resources are available? I don't know if they mean, I'm guessing through you.
Um, I would recommend reaching out to me on that one. That's kind of a little bit more specific, if you don't
Mhm.
mind. Yep.
Okay.
And kind of individualized as well. So I can address that offline if that's okay.
Okay, totally fine. And then if you see a job post that requires a driver's license and personal transportation, but the hiring manager said it was because they just don't want people to be late, you won't use your car or need a driver's license during your workday. Is that a valid job requirement? This excludes people who use public transportation or don't have a driver's license.
So that is a big one. I expect we're dealing with right now, Rebecca, right? As we're preparing our current cohort for applying to jobs and starting the interview process and stuff like that. And that's a question that comes up a lot. And that is the reasoning for that. 100% love it, right? Because someone showing up late, especially with like a coffee, is frustrating to me. But there's other ways to talk about that, right? I wouldn't require a driver's license. I would maybe reword it to, and hopefully I get this off the top of my head, but something like, has reliable transportation, can, make it to work on time or something like that. I would go for reliable transportation and ability to, travel back and forth to work because a lot of the disability community may not have the ability to get a driver's license. It could be a vision thing. It could be a physical thing. So that is automatically excluding a lot of the a significant portion of the disability community. So that driver's license to me is shouldn't be there, but maybe refrain it of like what you're really looking for. Again, I've worked with individuals with disabilities who have a car service that brings them. I've used public transportation myself when I lived in Los Angeles for years. So it is, I wouldn't make it a requirement. I would reward it of like what you're really looking for. Someone needs to be there. And of course, you're looking for that already. But when you put driver's license, I think you're going to lose a lot of great candidates. And we're personally experiencing that right now with a few of our individuals.
Yeah, thank you. And I like these questions because, again, I learn a lot as well. Last question, and then just a comment. Are you operating in Africa? Meaning, I'm guessing, if I'm in Africa, can I be in the program?
So we might get to this. I'm not sure if we are, but that we are only available to work in the U.S. right now, or
Mm.
individuals able to work in the U.S. right now. So unfortunately, right now, big news may be coming, but right now it's U.S. based only.
Okay, and then we had an anonymous attendee say, remember, if we believe someone has a disability or treat someone like they have a disability, they are protected under ADA. We don't get away with not offering accommodations because someone did not disclose a disability. Is that
Correct. Yeah.
correct? All
Yep.
right, all right. All right.
Yeah.
And then we had one more sneak in there. Therefore, do you have a set eligibility process candidates will need to meet? So I think for your program, are there particular requirements people need to meet?
Yes. And honestly, it's not many that the requirements they didn't meet. It's really the US one is really the biggest one. I think you have to be 18 older as well. And I think we have that in here, but there are a couple specific requirements we do need. The rest is kind of I'll say a gray area in a way. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And we're gonna please repeat the disability statement. Maybe we can do that as we go on.
Of what is a disability?
Just please repeat the disability statement. I'm not sure. About even if it's not disclosed to the employer.
Oh, that one. Okay. Yeah. Well,
Mhm.
let's get into accommodations a little bit later. And we
Yeah.
can kind of address some of those questions if that's all right. Is
Okay,
that
that
good? Is
works.
that
Thank
good?
you. And thank you, Heidi.
All right, great questions. I love it. I would do this all day rather than just present. This is great. But we have some important stuff we want to get to. So Rebecca, I'll turn it over to you for the applications and interview process.
Cool, thanks. So, we'll get a little bit more into some of what we're talking about, how to make processes and programs accessible. This is kind of where we can talk about that in a little bit more detail. But obviously, it starts with, as anybody who's in HR on here knows, it starts with the application and the interview process. And so, when we're thinking about specifically recruiting the disability community, but really, these tips will serve everybody applying and interviewing for your roles. We think about, how can we cast the widest net? How can we include the most number of people who will be able to get in the door, submit this application, and be considered for this program? And that's a really great mentality to have when you're thinking about how to make programs and workplaces more inclusive. So we really focus on communicating clearly and consistently throughout the process. So, we got great feedback from a fellow who is actually on your screen right now, from our last cohort in the spring. She said, when I went to apply for this role, I had to click through all of the steps, but I couldn't see everything that I was going to need when I applied until I got to that stage. So I'd fill out a question and then I'd realize, oh, I need to get my cover letter. And then I'd have to go get my cover letter and come back and upload it. It would have been really helpful if it had said at the beginning, here are all the things that you're going to be asked to upload, and here are the things you're going to need to apply for this role. That's great feedback, and that's a really great way for us to improve our communication throughout the whole process. So now our application, on the very first page, it says, you're applying for this, here are all the steps you're going to go through, here are all the things you're going to need to progress through this application. And so that's a really good best practice for any sort of program that you're putting together, is having that consistent communication throughout the process. Another thing, which is honestly easier said than done, but it's a process that you can start to work on and have conversations with your team, ensuring that application platforms are accessible. So if someone is going to apply for your program or a role at your company using a screen reader, if they're going to try and apply on their mobile device, is the application going to work? So that's something that we look into, just to make sure, we aren't screening someone out just because they have to apply from a tablet versus a desktop or laptop computer. We also really find it important to offer accommodations at every stage of the process. So on that application, we're going to, put a statement about if there's an accommodation or some sort of support you need to complete this application, please reach out. And same thing, if someone gets offered an interview, we reach out, we say, hey, we'd love to interview for this program. If there are any accommodations that you need to show up your best and feel really confident going into this interview, please let us know. So even just building in some of that language of like acknowledging that people might need accommodations, and might really benefit from having some supports built in, that really starts to create kind of an inclusive environment from the get-go, that people feel like, oh, they've asked me a couple times, like if I need an accommodation or something, maybe it's okay to start that conversation, even if in other contexts, maybe they've been nervous to start that conversation, but just to really show like, hey, we're here for this conversation. We're open to this conversation. If you want to talk about accommodations, like, let's do it whenever you need to. Additionally, and this, obviously this goes across the board, but use a fair and inclusive evaluation process. So we really work as a team to recruit for our program. So we have different folks from different teams read applications, and then we use a pretty systematic process for rating interviews and applications, so that we can make sure everyone has a fair shot. Everyone's being evaluated on the same criteria that has absolutely nothing to do with their disability. And making sure that as a team, we're aligned on who are the people that we're looking for, and how can we make sure that we're reading all of these applications and going through all of these interviews, keeping that in mind, exactly the type of person that we want to bring through the program. Also really important, training interview teams on accessibility and bias kind of ties in with the previous piece about using an fair and inclusive evaluation process. But this is a good takeaway, especially if you're in the HR world, or you're some type of leader, or you're running or starting to run a program, is really to have conversations with the team that's going to be running the program, and certainly recruiting for the program, about, accessibility and bias and certain things that might come into play. Say if someone, because of their disability, they show up to the Zoom meeting and they don't turn their camera on. Maybe some people with certain visual impairments, they sit really close to the camera, so they're not comfortable turning the camera on because they don't want you looking at, the top of their forehead for the interview. And really just, it's very human to interpret someone showing up to an interview not on camera in a certain way, but with the context that, hey, maybe this person has a disability, maybe they're not able to be on camera, really just kind of reframing that and thinking like, well, let's evaluate this person as a candidate, having nothing to do with whether or not they have their camera on, just kind of thinking about accessibility and how bias can show up, because we are human, and we can't take bias totally out of the equation, but we can talk about it with our teams as we're building programs and hiring, so that we can keep it top of mind to see where we can mitigate bias in these processes. Also, we do this a lot. We gather feedback from all of our interviewers before we make a decision. So, we have several of us on an interview panel. We all fill out the same form, and then we have our little debriefs, and we just make sure everybody's on the same page about how to move forward, if we're going to follow up to the person with any questions or anything like that. And so it's important to us that it's a collaborative effort, and everybody comes at these types of processes with different perspectives, and it's important that we bring all of those to the table while we're making decisions. All
And for
right.
this one, Rebecca, I just want
Mhm.
to point out, especially if you're in the HR world, we talked about accessibility. Many times you might be using a vendor and they say, oh, yeah, 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 we're accessible. Make sure they are. Actually run through your own processes. Because I guarantee you they're just giving you lip service sometimes. And I've done it before. I've worked with different vendors who tell me one thing and tell their client the other thing. So just make sure if you're, run through your application process, go through your accommodation process, see what it's like. And when Rebecca talks about offering accommodations at every stage, one of the biggest advice I can give you is put that the ability to request an accommodation on your career page that you're hosting. Once they click somewhere and go somewhere else, and if it's there, you might have missed someone who needed that accommodation or some assistance to get to that application page. So have it before your actual job search page, if that kind of makes sense for you all. Awesome.
All right. So, and again, this is from the framework of our program, but it really can be applied to any sort of inclusive, accessible program or process that you're trying to build within your organization. A really important thing that we do is, personally, my favorite part of the program. We really focus on creating a community. And someone, I think, at some point had a question in the chat, sorry, Yvonne, about how to make people feel safe when disclosing a disability or asking for accommodations. I forget what the exact question was, but basically how to create a safe space for these conversations specifically related to disability and accommodations happen. And I think a lot of that draws back to this idea of creating community. So we were really intentional about this because, especially in our program, it's our intention to make it a space where maybe people who have struggled in the workforce in the past can play around with, well, how do I talk about my disability in the workplace? How do I ask for an accommodation? When do I ask for an accommodation? What accommodation do I ask for? And different kind of challenging topics that people don't often have a space to discuss, and certainly won't discuss unless they're feeling safe in the place where they are. So, and I think, this can be applied to really any workplace, where you can create a community and make people feel safe to show up as their authentic selves. They're probably going to show up a little better to work and be a little bit happier to roll up to work every day. So I think that's why this is so important to us. So in order to do this in our program, we, from the get-go, we set really clear expectations as a team. So obviously, as the folks managing the program, we have certain expectations about how people are going to show up, and that they're going to show up, and that they're going to communicate about, different assignments and timelines and things. But also, we really take time to set expectations as a team. So we'll do an activity where people will throw out, like, how do they expect themselves to show up? How do they expect the other folks in the cohort to show up, in terms of, like, how are we listening to each other? What are we doing with the information that's said in these small group meetings? What do we do when we disagree with each other? How do we respectfully disagree with each other? How do we give each other feedback? And we really talk about these things so that we can come to some sort of consensus, and make it a place where everybody feels like they have the opportunity to speak up and to listen and to try things and to do things wrong, and to learn and to grow. So that's a really important part of our process that I think really can be applied to any team and any organization. It's also really important to us, and this is a really great accessibility tip and inclusion tip across the board, is to be really clear about what to expect at every juncture possible, providing information and details about exactly what to expect, whether it's from a specific meeting or an assignment that someone's received. Like, being really clear about, this is what's going to happen in this meeting, this is your role in this meeting, this is what we'll expect you to do in this meeting, and this is how we'll expect you to follow up. And putting that out aloud to a person, put it in writing. But the more that we can clarify expectations, and let people know exactly what's coming down the pike and what's expected of them, the more we can open up the channel for conversations when people might need accommodations or see opportunities when we could build in supports for people, so that they have everything they need to participate in the way that they want and need to. Um, we also do lots of icebreakers. I know there might be some of you cringing behind your computer screens right now, but you know what? They work, and we get some good laughs out of them, and I think it puts people a little at ease. So they are corny, but they also serve a purpose. Um, at the beginning of each cohort in our program, we also do something that one of our alumni coined the term speed friending, where we just put all of the fellows that come through our program in breakout rooms in pairs just for like 5, 10 minutes, and they just chat. No prompts, no nothing. It doesn't have to be work related, and we just give them the opportunity to connect with each other. Similar to, like I said a couple times, we address accessibility options early, even in the recruitment process, just so that people know, like, we're very open to trying different things to make anything that we do in this program accessible to you, work for you, support you, meet you where you are in terms of what you need to succeed. And we remind people of that all the time, which is something that, again, like any manager, any leader can implement, and it really kind of helps to create a more inclusive space. We also have a very open door environment. So Kevin and I talk really candidly, really openly with all of the fellows that come through our program. If they need anything, they can always call us, and we'll chat through anything with them. And all of these things, I think, do, especially for the disability community, and for folks who have struggled maybe in the workplace before. I think a lot of this kind of sets the stage for a place where they can try things and they can learn and build up some confidence, maybe in areas that they weren't confident before, and also, support each other as they navigate some of these the challenges that we all know we face in the workplace.
I love when you present because I look at the chat and the questions. Some good stuff out there. Someone wants to know our favorite icebreakers, and I know you got some good ones, so I'm going to steal whatever you say. But what are yours?
Oh, we have a great one about like, would you rather win a Nobel Prize or an Olympic medal? That's a fun one, and I'm always surprised by people's answers. We also have one that can get a little heated, that was inspired by a previous fellow, and it's like, would you rather go to the movies, stream, or watch like a DVD? And people get really heated about that. And I enjoy watching that, especially because I have no stake in that game and don't really have a strong opinion. So that's a fun, kooky one that we've enjoyed.
That's good. That's good. Another one said, who should you disclose a disability to, i.e., the hiring manager, the HR supervisor, and at one point of the hiring process? And that's, I won't say a loaded question, but it depends. It really does depend on when you need an accommodation, or disclosing a disability typically means that you might need an accommodation or you just want to tell someone. You don't have to disclose or identify. But you could whenever you want during the process. So again, that depends on the job, the person, all that. There's so many different factors that go into it. But what I'll tell you this is, Rebecca just talked about that number 4 bullet, address accessibility options early. Again, accessibility doesn't mean accommodations. It means how I could best perform my job, basically. And we do that again. And when we put out the job notice or job description, when we set up the interview, when we set up the job, we do it throughout. And we ask the individual, is there anything we can do to better support you? That's what every great manager should be doing. Disability, no disability, accommodation, accessibility, whatever it is. What can I do to help you better at your job? Is anyone's job as a manager, in my opinion. So we do that again. We're constantly asking, is there anything we can do to be better? Is there anything you need to be more successful? And to kind of counteract that question, that's how it should go, right? Why should the job seeker, the applicant, the employee have to keep on like asking for something when if it's already there or it's already addressed, that kind of helps create that conversation. And it's funny because when we do that in our program, Rebecca, what's the typical response we get when we ask? I put you on the spot
Wow,
there.
no one's
What?
ever asked me that before.
No one's ever asked me that before. I don't even know. And then we kind of work out. Maybe a lot of individuals who might need an accommodation, and not everyone, the person with the disability needs an accommodation, first of all. But uh, we found out in our program, a lot of people don't know because they don't know what the job's going to be like exactly, right? Oh, I didn't know I was going to be on Zoom 700 hours a day. And being on Zoom 700 times a day, I know I need this. So again, as a good manager, as a good leader, we're always asking these questions. How can we help you? And that's that create an open door policy. And I continue to say it over and over again every time I meet with someone. If you ever need me, reach out. And if you don't want to be reached out to, then you don't have to say that. But if you are really want that open environment for your individuals to succeed in a program or in your workplace, to me that's always an important thing. I'm always asking Rebecca, we good? We good? We good? Anything else you need? Instead of her having to ask it or someone else in the thing to have to ask it. And I think that creates a better environment. Um, yeah, disability or no disability. So I'll leave it there.
Agreed. I also saw a comment in the chat from Katie. It'd be helpful to have a have sample language about expectations for a meeting. Yeah, so I can share with you just aloud like what I how I will do that for fellows, and I mostly do that because I've gotten feedback that it would be really helpful. So like when I'm sending out a meeting invite, or if I have a like a living syllabus that I share with the people that go through the program, I'll write something like, in this meeting, we'll be covering topics X, Y, and Z. The format will be, 15 minutes of, slide deck lecture. And then the rest of the time will be in breakout rooms. So come ready to participate if you're feeling up to it today. And just know that we will be, coming off of mute. So just kind of laying the foundations of like, if you're going to be listening the whole time and you can, versus if you're going to be expected to like come off of mute and maybe come on camera if you can and talk, just so that people are aware and can be mindful of how and when, they can show up in a good way to the meeting. So that's just one example. I also always try and do that stuff in writing. So like even if I tell people aloud, like, oh, when we all meet next on Friday, we're gonna do this, I'll usually also follow up in an email or in a Teams chat with them. Like I said on the call, on Friday, we'll follow up with this, just so that we can provide that information in different ways so that people who encode and understand information in different ways can really have it sink in, which is actually a great segue into this slide. Um, so yeah, like what I was just describing, is inclusive learning, is based in the Universal Design for Learning framework. So inclusive learning really focuses on creating environments where everybody, regardless of their needs and abilities and backgrounds, can thrive and reach their full potential. And like within that, universal design for learning is designed to be flexible and inclusive, providing multiple pathways for people to access and engage and demonstrate their learning. So, like I said at the beginning of the webinar, my background is in universal design. I didn't start in universal design for learning. I really started in the world of universal design for physical space, but a lot of the principles remain the same. So, thinking about flexibility, how can we make our programs, our processes flexible so that people can engage with information and with projects and with assignments in different ways so they can engage in the way that works for them. So that could be, offering opportunities. If you get an assignment, you can do a verbal presentation, you can put together a visual like on Canva or something, you could do something in writing. So offering those types of opportunities, and then also presenting things in lots of different ways, in written format, in an email, in a document that we share, in a slide deck, saying it out loud in a meeting, and really just offering lots of different ways for people to get what they need and also show what they've learned. And that's classic universal design. In addition, we think about in universal design simplicity and intuitive use. How can we make everything that we're presenting in the program simple and intuitive? So, for example, in that living syllabus that I have for the people that go through our program, I list, it's kind of like it can look like a calendar, or it can look like a list of dates and what's going on a given date. Yesterday, a fellow said to me, they were like, the deadlines are like chronologically ordered with the meetings and the speakers that we're going to, but I never know what's a deadline and what's a meeting and what's a speaker. And I said, oh, great. Like, yeah, that's not super intuitive. What if we write assignment next to everything that has a due date? That's something you actually have to turn in. And they were like, oh, that's great. So, using that feedback to make things more simple, to make things more intuitive for the people in the program, is a really critical part of this, inclusive and universal design for learning. And it's very iterative. I've told you several examples of where I haven't thought of something until someone who's in the program says, well, hey, um, this doesn't really work for me, or this is unclear for me. And that's kind of the beautiful thing about universal design and universal design for learning in particular, because it's all about being flexible and learning from the feedback that you're getting about what people's different needs are and how we can adjust things to make it work more for more people. Like I said before, casting the widest net with what we're putting out there so that the most people can engage with it. And it's very person centered and it's very iterative. Yeah, so I think that mentality is something that can be applied to lots of different spaces, whether you are running a program like this, whether you're a leader, whether you have a team that you work with, taking into consideration some things like flexibility and simplicity and intuitive use, these universal design principles can actually make processes more accessible, more usable, even, more streamlined for everybody, not just people with disabilities.
Heidi, or rather, Rebecca, Heidi wants to know if there's written information on all the things you're talking about. So, like specific examples, because you're saying a lot of good stuff, and I guess Heidi wants to see it like on paper.
Yeah, actually, we're for National Disability Employment Awareness Month, we're going to be putting out some resources. Disability Belongs will be sharing some resources, and I believe I put one together that covers a lot of what I just said. So we'll be sharing that in October for National Disability Employment Awareness Month.
Great. It'll be on your website?
Yeah, and on our
Yeah.
socials.
Oh, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. All right. So this is a little bit more of what I was just talking about. But like I said, a part of our creating the inclusive learning space is using the universal design framework to build the curriculum, and certainly understanding individual learning styles. So every cohort that comes through our program um, is totally different. When our spring cohort graduated in June, I thought, wow, we've learned so much. We've implemented so many new things. Like, I feel like we've covered it all. And then we bring in a new cohort in August, and I'm learning all new things about, how they learn best and what supports that we could build in so that their learning is optimized. So it's very individualized. And I think that's also something that, anybody pretty much working in any job where they work with people can take away from this, and thinking about, how can you be like receptive to individuals that you work with learning style and things like that. Um, Another important part of our program is that we really like to make sure that the fellows that come through the program are exposed to the entire organization and get to connect with our whole organization at Disability Belongs, because they bring really valuable information and experiences and skills to the organization. So we want them to be able to contribute that. And B, because we want them to not feel like, oh, these like temporary employees that we bring on for 5 months and then never see again. Like, we want to make them part of our community, because they have expertise that we can learn from as well, and we can continue to learn from. And when we expose them to lots of different things that we do at Disability Belongs, they leave with experiences maybe even broader than they expected when they came in. So we really like to train folks in the program to be well-rounded, to be able to do lots of different jobs and diversify the types of jobs that they can apply for. So I've already given lots of examples, but I think, I've hit on the communication piece for sure. I touched on the living syllabus. That's a really great tool. I feel like even like teams can use if you're working on a specific project, like mapping out all the different steps of that project and have it be a living thing where, you can change dates around, and you can update different steps if you realize something goes in a different place than you anticipated. And that's just a really great way, I think, to keep everybody on the same page. Also taking into account that every group of people might be able to collaborate best in a different way. So in our program, we certainly adjust that collaboration depending on who shows up and who's in the program. So that can look a little different, but that's the importance of the iterative, universal design, individualized style planning and running the program. I mentioned this before too. The combination of verbal and written directions or feedback or assignments or any sort of information sharing, I feel like is critical. Yeah, it just helps people to reinforce whatever's been discussed. And like Kevin said, we always are asking for feedback. I mean, pretty much every week. I will say to every fellow in the cohort at some point, if there's something that's not working for you, please tell me, because I'm sure that there's a way we could play around with it to make it work better. And I think that is where we learn most of the things that make the program really work for people is from that feedback. So yeah, and I think that also draws back to my original point about building community. If people aren't feeling safe here, they're not going to give that feedback. And so it all kind of ties together.
Yeah, and as we're managing, as we're an organization, as a company, a lot of people hesitate and are uncomfortable asking for help or asking questions they think that should have been answered or they should have known. So when you provide that welcoming to do that, that's when the employees feel more for employees, mentors, leaders, mentees, leaders, participants, whatever you want to call it. That's when they feel most comfortable asking questions and providing some feedback and, clarifying stuff. And that second to last bullet is very important too. Even if you don't want to write an email afterwards, some things, everyone's got different learning styles. Again, disability or no disability. But if you give directions on a Zoom at the end, you could be like, hey, so we're looking to do A, B, and C, right? And or ask, do you understand what we just went through? I I haven't said it today, but I did it last webinar I did with Candid. I would say, does that make sense? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Because sometimes I ramble, sometimes maybe I don't make sense. So I'm always constantly, and Rebecca, you do it now too, since working with me, is like, does that make sense? Because I want to make sure it's making sense. Like I'm talking for a reason. I hope it makes sense to the person I'm talking to. So I want to make sure that they got that. So that verbal written follow-up is very important. I just want to stay in that chat all day long. All right, so pathways to employment. So again, we have a wonderful program where we deal with professional development. They get skills, soft skills, hard skills, all that good stuff. And then we want to make sure our end of our program is we're not a job placement organization, but the end goal is to help our participants to find some really great roles and jobs out there, specifically in leadership roles. So again, we do work on a lot of those soft skills when we talk about professional development. We do anything from interviewing to resumes to cover letters to LinkedIn learning. Uh, we also do professional skills like, how to run a meeting, where I think we're tackling this year. We're talking about imposter syndrome. That's really real. We talk about all these different things, how to run a meeting, how to write a professional email, how to respond to this, how to ask for feedback, all that good stuff. And that's very important. So we concentrate a lot on that. Resumes and cover letters are actually in the thick of that right now. And nobody likes writing a resume. I hope it's really rough. But there's like things that, working with employers and working with applicant tracking systems, I know that this fancy resume is not going to be really great when it's submitted for an application. So we work and kind of educate the individuals on how to make a better resume. And again, keeping it as simple as possible, highlighting your strengths, highlighting things you've done, all that good stuff. And something we're really covering that is really that job match, right? So look at that job description and match your resume to the things that they're looking for. So we do a lot about that. And earlier I talked about external partnerships to lean on. So we use LinkedIn Learning for our fellows. We actually just implemented that this year because as an organization, we are provided LinkedIn Learning, which is a really, really great resource. It's got just amazing catalog of trainings of everything. So we made that accessible through a grant for our participants in the program. So we not only go over resumes and cover letters, we say, hey, check out these links, check out these recordings. There's a 6-minute video here, or there's an hour thing on resumes. Uh, Applying to jobs is something where we actually, as Rebecca said, we kind of ask for feedback. And one of the things that this cohort specifically said is we don't know where to find the jobs or what are the right jobs for me. So we're kind of figuring that out right now. Like what's that specific job or industry or role that could be perfect for that individual. So we're going to tackle that actually Monday. Then applying to those roles. If you ever apply to a job, it is not fun. We let them know that. So we kind of talk about not applying to all the jobs, but applying to the right jobs, right? It's not quantity, it's quality of jobs. So we walk them through the process of that, making sure they take their time. If they need to request an accommodation, we talk about that stuff. And then interviewing is another difficult part of the job. Because many people, I always say this, many people aren't having those conversations. Like I'm not talking to Rebecca and being like, oh, tell me where you want to be in 5 years, Rebecca. Like your friends and family don't really ask that to you. So they're typically questions you get in that one experience that you're not used to answering. So practicing is very important. Again, being on the employer side of things, I realized that like the employers are looking for specific things. So I don't really make mistakes is not a great answer to tell me about a time you made a mistake in the job. So really helping using the STAR method, helping them really come up with some great answers, using their personal experience, looking at their resume, reading about them, knowing them, helping them come up with some questions to those typical ones that are asked. One of the best advice I always got was every question an interviewer is asking you is, why should I hire you? So in every answer, that should be addressed. So that's a really huge part we do. Again, work with two external partners right now on helping. We do the interview practice, and then we bring it to another external partner to even further even more because we know how important it is, especially in disability employment. In my experience working with large companies, I've seen people who are just on paper perfect for the role, but totally bomb an interview. So we really do a lot of focus on that, making sure we're ready to go. Another huge part in pathways to employment is our employer partners. So we're continuously looking for employers out there who are looking to hire people who have policy backgrounds, people who are in the entertainment industry, people who are in faith and spiritual department. So we're constantly creating employer partnerships across the country for our not only for our current participants, but also our alumni of over 300 people. So continually looking at that partner. If you'd like to be one of those employer partners, please reach out. And then I promise we're quick on time, but requesting accommodations. So this is a big one. And again, as we talked about throughout this presentation, having that open communication back and forth and creating that community, this is where that really comes out. Like, how do I request an accommodation? Because it's either I don't know how to, or I don't know how to, or don't know what I need, or it's I have requested an accommodation and it was probably the worst experience I ever had in my life because they weren't able to accommodate me and were very mean about it or ignored it. So many, many different horror stories we hear from individuals who request accommodations. And so what we do with the participants in our program is really help them understand what they're going to need. And again, as we create that community, not everyone comes in being like, I know exactly what I need. I'd say that happened maybe once, I don't know, maybe a couple of times, but some people don't even know exactly what they want. And just because you have this disability means you have that, you need that accommodation. That's not true. Like not every person's strung differently, whether they have the same disability or a different disability or no disability. So really understanding what their needs are specifically. And then really looking at the job and how would I do that. Also, one thing we just had a very uncomfortable conversation with one of our participants because with their disability, there was a limited stuff, limited roles out there, limited opportunities that they could look for. And we have to look for that and seek that because if with this disability, you can't be on meetings all day because it's just not a great idea. It's not beneficial for anyone, right? You're going to be struggling. The company's not going to like it. So it's really finding the right job for the right person with that reasonable accommodation. So again, we do a whole presentation on accommodations and we're doing it pretty soon. But we help that individual really become comfortable with when to ask for it. Do I need to ask for it? And more importantly, what the employer's responsibility is and how that open communication should work, right? Going in and saying, I need accommodation. I don't know what that is, but I need one is not a great conversation. So going in and really understanding what you need, whether it's, look, 3 breaks throughout the day versus 2 breaks, to leave early one day, to be flexible so I can go to a doctor's appointment. I know I hear disability belongs. I had to take my daughter to an appointment last minute yesterday, and I was able to take her hour and a half and then came back to work and finished up my work rather than having to take a day off or having to stress about it, all that stuff. So, really understanding the individual, what the company's policy is, all that good stuff. And again, that's a whole conversation we can have. My email will be at the end of the presentation. All right. So we help that. That's a really part of that community is really understanding. And a lot of individuals don't know right off the bat what they do. And through our conversation, through our mentorship, they are able to go and be more successful in their job search. All right, alumni engagement. So obviously we have oh, was it 307 or 308 alumni right now? Again, most of them are doing a great job, very much employed. So there's a couple of things you could do with your alumni. First of all, communicate consistently. Right, when I came to the job, there was kind of a lag of reaching out to our alumni. So Rebecca and I kind of came on together, and we decided let's make it a plan for an engagement. We are inviting alumni to come speak to our current cohorts. We're reaching out to them, getting updated information. That's how we got some of our wonderful stats. Make sure they're on our newsletters, make sure they're looking at our policy, action alerts that they can help. Can they come back? Can they be donors to the program? Constant communication, again, build that community. We also have an entertainment and media focus area that has a lab for creatives with disabilities, and they have monthly meetings, is it, Rebecca? They also have a Slack channel where they have that little community outside or after our programming, which is really important. Provide opportunities for learning and development. We're actually in our stage right now of combining some of our programs and talking about how we could create quarterly opportunities for learning and development. What's out there right now? AI is a big one. Research, all these things we're looking to do, or our alumni are looking to do. We want to be there as a thought leader and an opportunity for development as well post our program. Promote our success stories. You'll see a couple of success stories right after this slide, I hope, are coming down soon. Promote the success story. So when someone gets hired, we like to promote that. That's great for funders to see. It's great for our community to see. It's great for other fellows to see. It's great for potential fellows to see. So we look at those promote stories, and then gather feedback and measure activity for future goals. So the feedback and measure activity for future goals is great, but it's also great for funding. So again, we have a really good employment rate, right? I think it's 79%. A couple other factors go away. It's about 91% compared to anywhere from 25 to 30% of people with disabilities typically have as an employment rate. We're way up in the 79 to 91s, which is really nice. So almost triple that of our nation's number for people with disabilities. So that's helping getting funders, but it's also good for future goals. Like what is the learning development opportunities? How do we build a better community? How do we build a better communication system to our alumni? We're blasting it out, and sometimes we went to spam. So hey, let's create a LinkedIn page where you can get to the people that are on LinkedIn, which is the majority of them. So constantly, again, much like I said, your accommodation process and your application process, we're constantly looking at all these things and how we can make them better. All right. A couple of highlights. I was right. All right. So here's our alumni success. So again, we have about, I think it's 308 or 309, Rebecca, leadership program graduates. We've been around for a little over 10 years now. And this is a part of our In-Deem series last year that we did. We reached out to a lot of our fellows to come talk to our cohort, and they shared really good stuff about what they're doing now, along with what they're doing, or a little bit of an inspirational quote or something about their time in the program. So here's some from the past. Some good stuff there. Here's another one. I like Jeremy's, gave an inspirational one. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, and go together, lifting others up and supporting them when they're down. That's the key to having a fulfilling career and living a meaningful life. Um, Again, they're all doing great stuff around the country, whether it's in policy, entertainment, or the other fields we work out. And again, like I said, 91% alumni employment rate compared to about a 37% national rate. So we are making an impact, and that's why we want to continue to grow our program and see success. Real quick, again, please reach out. There's a lot of great questions, a lot of great comments in the chat and in the questions. Feel free to set some time with us. We'd love to talk to you. There's a lot of specific disability questions out there. There's a lot of accommodations. There's some law stuff. We're not lawyers, but we're comfortable. We're very, very, very much open, like our program is, open to feedback, open to having conversations. So please reach out. I'd love to have a conversation with all of you. So partnering with Disability Belongs, we do love sponsorships because it supports our whole organization and helps us do our better job at what we're doing already. We have consulting, fee for service partnerships. Again, we do tons of training. I can look at that accommodation process and help you fix it. I can help you recruit people with disabilities. I can help you develop partnerships in the community. I've done it for large companies. I've done it for small companies. I continue to see that success. And also co-branding. So if it's not dollar related, we also have some really good co-branding opportunities where we put together resources. We're doing one for Indeem with some other nonprofits and local companies as well. We're doing a wonderful webinar with AARP coming up. I think someone else was an AARP partner in October. So check out all our wonderful stuff happening for Indeem throughout September and into October as well. And there's our contact information. I think the slides or the recording will be shared. Definitely one of those. I will get to the Candid team on that one. But in the meantime, there's our emails. Again, feel free to reach out to us. We do have an open door policy, and we will look forward to going on the disability inclusive or effective journey with you.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. That was perfectly timed. And thank you so much, Rebecca, as well. We just had one question, but I don't know. It says, do you provide guidance on reporting issues of potential disability discrimination, for instance, if experienced from a supervisor?
I'm reporting issues. So to me, I'm reading that as more of a legal question. So I would say we don't, but again, happy to set up a time to talk that through. Because obviously everything's a little different. Maybe it's just a conversation versus like getting a lawyer or something like that. But happy to talk about that.
Okay, and Marsha, don't be frustrated. You're getting a recording and some version of the slides, so you're okay. Yeah, Candace letting you know. And Rebecca, you seem to be answering Anna. Is that right?
Yes, I started typing it, but it was really long. And I was
Long.
just gonna
Okay.
say, Anna had a question, which Kevin already touched on about like if you ask
Right.
people what they need to be best supported, they don't always know the answer, and that's a very
Yes.
good question. At Disability Belongs, we use an interactive accommodations process. So if someone is having a challenge, they'll go to the HR team, talk about what the challenge is, disclosing or not the disability that might or might not be causing that challenge. And then they'll work together to brainstorm some things they could implement to help the person be more successful in their role. And then they go back, they try it, they talk about it, they try something else, they talk about it, and it's a very interactive process. So in an ideal world, in an ideal workplace, that kind of interactive, collaborative process can happen when it comes to accommodations. I know that's not always possible, but I'm also trying to answer this in under a minute so that I don't keep anybody past 3:30. But if you have
You
more
did
questions and want to
great.
chat about it, reach out.
And
Thank you so much. Mhm.
askjan.org is a great resource for businesses looking for accommodation support as well as employees or job seekers looking for I think you can actually type in the disability and it'll come up some accommodation offers for you. So that's a
You
really
said
good
Ask Jan,
Ask
J
Jan,
J N
ASKJAN
A N. Okay.
Yeah,
dot org.
Rebecca put that in the chat as well.
Oh,
Nice. Thank you.
awesome.
Hmm.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. We appreciate our audience as well. Always learn a lot from you, and we hope to see you next time as well. Bye, everyone.
Thanks so much.
Bye bye.